thought I would address at least try and do this, keep this short because I know I've been watching a lot of these videos and they've been very long. You got 2 hour the JonTron and Destiny discussion, which and just reacting to that and what JonTron said, and then some of the reactions to that from various parts of videos and various YouTubers, etc. And just trying to obviously just to point it out straight away, saying that of course I'm not gonna sit on the fence much like Ahmed Skeptic did in his video, in which it's about 40 minutes of him walking on eggshells, sitting on the fence, all that kind of stuff. And it's very confusing to watch that video. I think once you get past the halfway point, it gets a little bit better. He does start to actually say something, and because the first 20 minutes it is quite difficult because he's kind of having this weird conversation with himself, and I can understand it because he doesn't want to throw JonTron under the bus, and because he knows JonTron has said some things that they maybe aren't right and they definitely don't sound right. I think that's the clear point that I think that's a point that pretty much everyone can agree. In the debate, he does say some things, and it doesn't quite sound right. It doesn't sound good the way he's expressed it. And I think the way the whole debate was set out, discussion was set out, it didn't work very well for him. And admittedly, if it's a 2 hour long discussion they're having, he's gonna say something that he doesn't either doesn't fully mean or he doesn't word very well, and I think he just sort of gets flustered in the debate, which certainly doesn't help him. And I do think he has a point with the main point he's trying to get at. And I don't think JonTron is a racist. I don't think he's trying to say anything too controversial. I don't think he's alt-right either. That's one thing Ahmed Skeptic was trying to get at, which I was kind of confused because it was like, is he saying that he's racist? Is he trying to say that he's? I don't think he's trying to say that, but to be honest, Ahmed Skeptic, I'm not sure he knows himself what he was trying to say in the video. He was trying basically through the whole video, he was saying that I don't know what JonTron thinks. I don't know whether he's all right. I don't know whether he's racist or he was trying to be racist or he was accidentally racist. I'm not sure if he meant that properly. I'm not sure if he's actually as right wing as he's coming across on some of these things. And so that is a hard watch. If you want to watch that, you can watch if you've already seen that. It and whether you watch the full 40 minutes, uh, I did manage just about. I did kind of zone in and zone out, but it was very difficult for 40 minutes to fully keep on track of what he was trying to say because I'm not sure Ahmed Skeptic was sure what he was trying to say. Now I'm starting to do the same as him, so I'll try and get on to the actual debate. Talk about the actual debate he had with Destiny. Now that is 2 hours, as I've said. He says some things. They both say things that don't come across well. They both end up coming out. And of course, I would say as a more right wing kind of guy, anti bullshit, kind of anti bullshit. I don't know. Maybe bullshit if it supports my cause. I don't know. We all have our biases. Each of these guys has a bias. I don't think JonTron is necessarily some kind of ultra right wing guy. I think he's just somewhat right of center, and I think that's all you need to be these days to be considered not far right or some kind of alt right, alt light. I don't know. There's all these different terms. I mean, I don't think anyone actually knows what alt right is anymore. It's just a new thing. I know it got a lot of exposure because of Trump and everything, and I don't. He's not even like a raving Trump supporter. Neither the Trump is a far far right candidate either. But what he's trying to say is that he says one of the thing he kind of gets hung up on in that they are trying to talk about immigration. Now, immigration is a tricky subject, so that's maybe something he should have tried to not sit on the fence, what slightly delicately say things. Don't, or even when he was talking about crime, and he was like, black people commit more crime than whites. And it's like, even if you have the figures to say back these things up, you can't just I don't know. You've got to be a bit more careful about how you say it. You don't want to be saying it in like a way like, "Haha, told you black people were bad or they're aggressive criminals or whatever," because they commit more crime. And yeah, okay, they commit more crime. Uh, whatever. Um, what does that do? Etc. And there was also Destiny did a was on one of Sargon doing a live stream, and they had a discussion of sorts. And I have to say, this Destiny guy is I think he's very annoying. I don't agree large in part of what he says, and I also don't fully get what he's trying to get at. He just sort of picks at a thing and then gets the other person to try and give him something which either make them look bad, or I'm not sure what he's trying to do, whether he's trying to win an argument by doing so, by picking on one specific thing. Because he did that with Sargon, and he was like, because Sargon said basically making a reason for why blacks commit more crime or whatever, because he outlines that black at some point in the 70s or 80s, the black families stopped getting married, or much less, much more so, in fact, than white or any other race for some reason. And of course, Sargon has no idea. I don't think anyone would know why blacks stopped getting married in such a large number in the 70s and 80s. And yes, that's at the same time as a lot of other people of white people not getting married as much. You saw more divorces and more what you say, and then as a result of black people not getting married, you had a lot more fatherless children, and then that leads to crime, whatever, yada yada yada. You can draw the lines there into it, and yet Destiny was picking on it like, wait, well, why did they stop getting married? You've got to know that, otherwise you can't say whatever. And he was getting very angry. They were both shouting at each other, and they were both getting very up, very. He was getting very panicky about this one thing, and then they were both kind of like, "Fuck you, man! You're picking on this one thing," and it's like that's not really the point. I'm saying this is the reason that this is the reason for the crime growing up or whatever in the black community, because less people getting married, and then it's like, well, yeah, but why would they not get married? And he's like, it was just a shit show in the JonTron debate, and a shit show. I think this is kind of what people he does to people, and yeah, the structure was all over the place, and I don't know whether it's him that may. People are saying that he came across well in it, and yet he said he called all Japan racist. He said, "Well, Japan is the most racist country in the world," because JonTron was like, um, "Does anyone say that Japan should be less Japanese?" Or and he has a valid point there. It's like apparently only yeah, this is one of the things I can understand people like Destiny picking on, and the left kind of picking on. It's like it's only a thing if white people. It's only like people only picking on the fact that like reverse racism is the worst crime or whatever. It's like racism towards white people, which a lot of people might not agree is even a thing, because how can you discriminate against a group that is in power? I don't that has which isn't like the minority or whatever. I don't know how that fully works, but that doesn't make any sense. So basically, him go. But I do agree with the point that JonTron was trying to make there, and that no one tells the Japanese to be less Japanese. Apparently, it's only a problem for white Western countries that they aren't diverse enough, even though we are the most diverse open, accepting part of the world, and apparently we're so racist and stuff, which is something that a lot of people, which annoys a lot of people because it's so it makes you think that there's some kind of conspiracy, white genocide, or what I'll just say. Uh, yeah, even though you might believe it, you might not. Um, but that you can see how people might believe in it because of that alone. Because no one says, well, China should be less Chinese. And it's like you go to China, you go to Japan, you try and, or you go to the Middle East and say you should be less Arab, you should be less Middle Eastern. Although they do try and do that with Israel to some. You should be you should be less. Well, they don't say that you should be less Jewish. They say you should be nicer. But we'll not get into Israel Palestine because I don't know if they I don't think they don't think they got into that, but I mean, it's a shit show when you start getting into that. And every time John brought up Europe, um, Destiny would rebuttal it by he would say, oh, "Wait, I'm talking about America, not Europe." And then, but also, which he has some point, but not a great point because JonTron's just mentioning what's happening in Europe that could happen in America. The, that's the same thing. If one thing happens, a similar society in a Western society, the same thing can happen. Of course, the thing happening in Europe is it can definitely happen in America, but obviously it's easier for it to happen in Europe with smaller countries, smaller populations, and be changed more dramatically by fewer people, obviously. So you have 100,000 people from wherever, and they move to a smaller Western European country. They move to Norway, they move to Sweden, places with relatively small populations. That group then makes a big difference in the large scheme of things. So whereas 100,000 people move into America, it might make if they all move to the same place in America, it might make a regional difference, but in the population of 300 million, whatever like America is, it won't make a massive difference. You have to have it'll take a long time for these kind of things to have. But although the numbers of what was the numbers of Latin Americans is very low, though, because we don't obviously have Latin Americans in Europe. We do have them. There are Latin Americans in Spain, and there are schmitterings. I don't know, little places. I'm not even sure where other than Spain there's really many Latin Americans. I suppose there are some in I suppose every country will have some Latin Americans from somewhere, but they're not really a problem, obviously. Or maybe they are. I don't know. I do know it's Spain and I think Italy have a few Latin Americans, but obviously they're not a problem here because there's not that many other than, as I say, Spain and Italy. I think they had quite a lot of Latin Americans from various places, but I think they may have Italian heritage, like from Argentina. So it's kind of seen as they're returning in a way somewhat because they have heritage from Spain or Italy, like Argentinians, for example. So maybe, but also the numbers aren't as great. Whereas it's completely different if you have people coming from the Middle East. Like obviously, Destiny was talking about how immigration benefits a country. Now, I'm not saying, of course, you have to admit on all sides there are good things and bad things about immigration. And the thing is, JonTron's not saying no immigration. There should be no immigration. There should only be white immigration. He's not saying any of that. He's saying there should be a limit on it, and not that there should be. He kind of was saying the thing that got him in some trouble that makes him sound bad is the fact that, or the way Destiny pointed it out, made it seem like it was like we should have a white majority in Western society in America. In America, we should have a white majority. when he should have just been saying we should have an American majority, which, and I think to large extent that's what he meant. Largely, it's like we should have an American majority. Now, I obviously I don't think he meant American majority of like first, second generation immigrants. I don't know. Well, he and then yes, so getting to the point, it was about yeah, benefiting immigration, the benefits of immigration, and Destiny was trying to say that immigration from Mexico, for example, benefits America because you have cheap labor. Now, there are good things and bad things about cheap labor. We've had the same thing in Europe, from Eastern Europe and from outside of Europe, obviously. But while you say like the Czechs, mainly Poles, but you do get Czechs, you get Poles, you get Estonians, you get people from the Baltic states, people from Ukraine, Bulgaria, Romania. Some people actually complain a lot about them, which its benefits and its negatives. Now, obviously, the benefits are to the employers, so the actual people in the country don't really see. Say if you're not an employer, say if you're a person a young person, say for example, there's a lot of youth unemployment in Europe, say, and that's not helped by getting more immigrants or into our countries. And now I'm not saying youth unemployment in Europe is caused by immigrants from outside of Europe or other parts of Europe moving. You will get people from places like Spain and Greece, obviously going to places where there are more jobs, like Germany, UK, Scandinavia, wherever, and or Italy, Spain. A lot of these countries have very high youth unemployment. It's like nearly 50% youth unemployment, and even higher, I'm sure, in Greece. Greece is crazy. I don't even know how Greece is still around. Like it's just, but yes, of course, if you have youth unemployment, you aren't gonna want to then get in a lot of cheap labor to then take away jobs from not only take away jobs from the youth, but it's selling your young people's futures away. But also, if they do get a job, they're going to get less money. Now, you had the same thing in Britain with Eastern Europeans. Now, I'm not complaining about Eastern Europeans, they're great, but they're great. Well, maybe some of them might not be, but like, say you have construction workers, and this was a thing uh, where construction workers was basically it almost made it to the point where English people couldn't make a good living off of construction because you had so much cheap labor coming in from Eastern Europe who would do it for much less. Plumbers from Eastern Europe, all these kind of professions, they kind of like ran out by people from Eastern Europe. Now you have had a lot of Eastern Europeans going back to Eastern Europe. You had a lot of Poles going back to Poland because the wages are getting better there, but you still get lots of workers. And I'm not saying I don't like people from Eastern Europe. I like their culture. I used to live next to a Polish shop. I used to go in there just to buy interesting Polish, or they had all kinds of foods and stuff. But it's cool. I like those countries and stuff. But if it doesn't benefit your country from having these people in your country, and it's actually harming the industry, yeah, you can say there's also the upside to someone. Say you need building work, say you need a plumber, you can get it done for much cheaper, but then that's at the cost of your own homegrown plumbers and builders being priced out of the market. Then what did they have to do? Did they either have to work for less, or they have to get a different job or something. So there are benefits to immigration. You can say you get some cultural like you benefits to you can go eat whatever kind of food you want from around the world, and it's like yeah, there are good things about it. You do get, and yeah, it's like a bit. One of the things I've seen and heard in Norway is basically Norwegians think that Norwegian people are boring. So when they have foreigners come here, it's like exciting because they think either Norwegians are boring, and their culture is boring, which to some extent I don't like that because people are like, oh well, we're so boring, we're like vanilla flavor, and then you get you get like all these other different people who are here to sort of spice things up. Is that right? Spice things up, or not spice things up, but just different. They come and show you another way of life, which is not always a good thing either. But yeah, variety. And JonTron uh, was right in say he's basically what he basically was all trying to say is mass immigration isn't good, and that that's fair point, and it's not racist to not want mass immigration to anyway. Because I don't think if you do anything too much and you take too many people from anywhere and move them to another place, you don't get you get trouble. And of course, Destiny was ignorant in saying what he said about the Japanese. Uh, Also, what he said about Europe, he was living like saying that there are no riots. No, there are no riots. There is nothing happening. Admittedly, the way some people make it out, like there's bombs going off and riots and there's something happening in some Swedish ghetto or something every day. And like I've been to Sweden, it's like I don't think you can see that there are a lot of immigrants there, but not necessarily that every day there's some kind of crime committed by maybe there is some kind like petty crime maybe. No. And admittedly immigration you don't want to be importing problems, you don't want to be importing crime into your country, you don't want to be importing whatever. Say if your country's got enough problems already, like housing problems, it doesn't make any sense for you to then go, oh, we'll let a load of people in. We don't really have room for them. We don't really have anywhere for them to live, and we might have to choose between our own people and these new people, who gets a house first when they're on a waiting list, which isn't a good thing. Because I think you should put your like Trump says, America first. I would like to see like people putting their own country and their own people first, and then if you've got extra, if you've got spare room, you've got more money, then you can decide to let new people in if you want to, if you choose to, if you have the spare capacity, should we say, and if they can also benefit your country, then of course. Um, I don't need to prattle on about the pros and cons of immigration. That's for other people to decide, but that's just what I think. Of course, there's like anything, there are pros and cons to it. And I think the best way to look at it is not too much and be selective. And and I think that's kind of what JonTron was trying to get at. But then it came across as a bit racial, just racial to some extent when he was like preserving the white race or whatever. Yeah, preserving national identity because it's like, and he was right, and he was saying if a guy from Mexico moves to America, he wants to move to America, not Mexico. He doesn't want to move to, I don't know, one of the southern states like Arizona or New Mexico or California, wherever, and basically He'll move into some area and it'll basically be like Mexico anyway because all the shops will be and I've seen places like that in England, not Mexican places, but you go anywhere and you go to some immigrant areas and you walk down the street and it's like, which country am I in? Not necessarily being a bad thing, but like it kind of it's a little bit sad to some extent when everything is sort of like this immigrant street and it's like, well, you've got to have, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be shops and restaurants for all sorts of different things, but yeah, he had a point. Like if you want someone wants to move to America, you want to keep it American. Like you want to keep it British. You want it to be the country. You want it to maintain its identity without not diluting it, but also keeping it there. And then if people want to be a part of that, they can if they meet the criteria. And of course, you don't want to. I said not important crime, but the thing is, one thing the left doesn't seem to understand. They think it only benefits, or even if it doesn't benefit, they think, oh well, it doesn't matter. Our lives are so good that in the West that we should be able to take a bit of a hit on it. And you see, it doesn't help anyone if you import all the third world into the first world, because then it just becomes shit for everyone, you know? And that's what it's gonna be. It's like eventually, it's like if the whole of the third world leaves the third world, then what's the first world? If all the third world comes to it, then it's not going to be the first world anymore. It's just going to be the third world, or or maybe the second world if it's lucky. If it's lucky, or some areas might maintain first world, and then the poor people will just have to live in the crap third world, second world, and that, at the end of the day, it's poor people, poor lower income, lower class people that have to that lose out most of the time from mass immigration. Obviously, they don't miss out if there's just a couple of if there's a few scientists or pe people with highly skilled laborers come into the country. It's when the low paid, low skilled labor comes into the country that the low skilled, low wage people miss out, obviously, because they're getting replaced. They'll their wages will go down as a result of it. And that's just how it works. Those are the ones who might miss out on housing as well. And those are the ones that have to live in areas that experience high influxes of immigration. And and sometimes you might live in these areas and there might be high crime. There might be some of these people might not be so kind to the native population, especially if they live in this area and it's like it's majority immigrant or yes. So to summarize, this has been a very long thing, and it's hard. The reason I can understand why people like Amos Skeptic did such a long video, because it is very hard to grasp, and it is hard because you don't want to shit all over someone. You don't want to say they're racist, and I don't think he is. And I think all meant well in politics and stuff. And he's not a professional debater. He's not a debater or anything. So I think he's unlucky at the way that things have came out. And maybe he needs to take a second, think about what you say, and plan out what you're gonna say to some extent. I know you can't if it's a 2 hour thing. You don't want to write script. You don't want to be like a robot reading off a script. But you've got to be careful what you're saying when you're talking about very serious issues like crime and talking about certain races and immigration, and because but not just for the sake of political correctness or being insensitive, but also because it hurts. It'll hurt him. It'll backfire upon him when these things happen. It'll hurt his career. The way people think about him when he maybe just meant something fairly straightforward. And also, one last final thing: the fact that Destiny tries to be like, whoa, 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 you're Hungarian or you're Iranian, you half Hungarian, half Iranian. You wouldn't be considered white 100 years ago. What does it matter? It's not 100 years ago. Hungarian is white, undoubtedly. Or you could maybe argue going back, the Huns were maybe more like Mongols or something. I don't know fully how that works, but Hungarians are white. Even Iranians some Iranians look white, and but that is I have tried to look into this, and it is a very complicated. I don't know what kind of Iranian he is, because there's lots of different groups and ethnicities within Iran. And I mean, Indo-European at the end of the day. Aryan, in fact. JonTron's middle name is Aryan, I believe, because that's an Iranian a Persian name. apparently. And it's very interesting because, of course, if you went to a white nationalist or something, they wouldn't consider an Iranian white. Maybe they're certainly closer to whites than Arabs or Indians. Although yeah, you've got the Indo-Aryans that are kind of like the Aryans are like the Iranians. This is very common. I could do a video all about where white people come from, but a basic idea is, I think, from what I've mustered, and is that they all come from about like not Central Asia, but near enough. So Iran isn't about the right kind of area. Hence why we have the Indo-European languages, which most European languages are. But I would say JonTron's white, basically. He looks white, and some Iranians look white and or are related to. They're Indo-European, so they are related to white people in some kind of way. It is hard to explain, and this video's gone on for too long, and I can't. But yeah, in the end, he's not racist. Uh, this is all shitstorm, and hopefully it blows over, and hopefully you can explain it slightly better what he was trying to get at.